Hey, everybody. This is Don McCauley. I'm the Executive Director of Pipeline to Practice. And we have the good folks over at McGuirewoods who have generously volunteered their times. I don't even want to know what the billable hourly rate of this webinar is going for, but please do not send me a bill, guys, who are going to introduce us to the various practice areas that are available in private practice. So the idea behind this webinar is twofold. For 1Ls, as you enter into the OCI process, maybe earlier, midsummer to late summer, you'll have a better idea as to what the various practice groups at a big, large law firm will do. And then for those of you who are 2Ls who are about to embark on your summer associate programs, likewise, you'll know exactly what kind of assignments you can expect, I should say. You should accept them all. But what you can expect in terms of getting assignments out of the litigation group or the corporate group. So let's turn first to Greg. Are you there? Can you hear me?
I'm here. Thank you, Don.
Hey, cool. Yeah, you're welcome.
This is Greg Kilpatrick, partner at McGuirewoods here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Graduated way back in '96 from Hampton University with a BA in economics, and then went to the University of the People of the great state of North Carolina for law school, and graduated there in '99. And I currently practice in securities and M&A.
Awesome. Now let's turn to Justin. You're calling in from Dallas, right?
Yep. My name is Justin Opitz. I am a partner at McGuirewoods in the Dallas office. I went to Texas A&M undergrad, graduated in 2002, went straight into law school in Houston after that, and so my major was political science. I got a BS in political science. Went straight into law school in 2002 after graduation, graduated in 2005. Practiced in Houston for about 4 years after that, and I've been in Dallas since '08 and with McGuirewoods since 2015.
Excellent. Awesome. All right, Aaron, you're up.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aaron Jaroff. I'm an associate in McGuirewoods' New York office. I went to undergrad at Bowdoin College in Maine, graduated in 2006 with a degree in government and legal studies, and then went straight into law school at American University in D.C., moved up to New York with another firm, and then joined McGuirewoods almost 3 years ago.
Excellent. And then Misha.
Hi, everyone. My name is Misha Sloth. I graduated from Duke University in 2013, where I was a classical civilizations major. I went straight through.
Whoa, wait. A classical civilization major? What else are you going to do besides go to law school? What? Wowza. Okay. I'm sitting here thinking like my daughter just started her freshman year and she was like listing off these majors that like basically qualified her to come back and live on my couch, and I'm like nope. And I think classical civilization was one of those, Misha. I got to be honest with you.
Hey, you could always try to get a PhD or something like that. That's always an option.
Oh, okay.
You might still live on your couch, but at least you'll have a degree on your couch. So I went straight through for law school, also at Duke. I graduated in 2016, and now I practice in the debt finance group here at McGuirewoods in the Charlotte office.
Excellent. Awesome. And just so everybody else can know who's talking, this is Don McCauley. I'm the president and founder of Barbary Law Preview. I'm also, as I mentioned before, it's my privilege to be the volunteer executive director of a phenomenal organization, Pipeline to Practice, that I'm really passionate about. I actually had a history in a poli-sci major coming out of Loyola College, not the good Loyola from Chicago right now, but the one in Baltimore, which never makes the tournament. And I went on to, at Loyola, I spent about 4 years playing wiffle ball. got into one law school. I got into Albany Law School, where after my first year, I somehow made it to the number 4 in my class and got the big job at a large law firm in Manhattan, and then quickly realized there's got to be a better way for me to spend my life. But I'm not gonna say that you guys have made any mistakes. So don't go try to start a law school prep course, guys. So let's jump into it. Let's jump right into some of the questions. I'm interested to hear the difference between or how you guys describe, especially at the partner and then the associate level, describe the life of a litigation associate or an attorney at a large firm like McGuirewoods. So let's just take it from Aaron. I'll throw it up to you. What's the day in the life of a litigation associate? What's it look like?
Sure. So yeah, as the resident litigation associate on the call, I'm happy to speak to that. It really depends on what year you are in terms of your seniority as a litigation associate. First year all the way up through senior associate. When you first start as a first year, it can be a lot of what we call doc review, which is looking at documents that have been produced in litigations or might be produced in litigation, depending on whether or not you're looking at things that were documents that were produced by you from opposing counsel or documents that you're producing, and these are documents that are relevant to the litigation or could be relevant to the litigation claims that you're fighting about with the other side. Could be a lot of research memos. So that's going to be stuff that you might be familiar with from legal writing courses. It's going to be a lot of looking through Westlaw or Lexis databases to try to find the answers to various questions that partners or senior associates have given you that are relevant to a case, and then putting that together in a memo or a detailed email to the partner or the associate or the clients. And then as you get more senior, you start to transition into a lot of drafting. So drafting motions, drafting complaints, drafting discovery pleadings, and things of that nature. And then as you progress up, your day gets filled with things like a lot of client calls, a lot of calls with opposing counsel, depending on where you are in the stages of litigation, whether it's negotiating settlements, stipulations, arguing or trying to reach agreements about discovery requests that you've served, under the federal rules, or the comparable state rules. And then as you get more and more senior, you go into things like depositions. You can have days where you're flying around defending or taking depositions. Justin and I were doing a lot of that on a case we worked together on last year at this time. And then it's increasingly rare, but eventually sometimes litigation associates do get to go into court, depending on the size of the matter and the client. And so some of your days can be in court arguing motions, or even at trials, although trials are, again, something that's increasingly rare. But most of the time, day in the work life of litigation associate is a lot of working at your desk, researching, writing, answering emails about the cases that you're working on, and calls with clients. Luckily, we now have, at least in the New York office, standing desks or sit-stand desks, which I'm told is going to help fight the sedentariness of some of the days being a lawyer.
So wait a minute, you're buying into the whole sitting is the new smoking thing?
I'm not sure. I've only taken advantage of the standing option for about 2 hours of the maybe month and a half that we've had these, so I'm not sure how much I'm buying into it, but at least there's the option now.
Yeah, my friends all love them. They all swear by them. I should just step back really quick, and just in terms of because I know that the audience is is a bit younger, and also, we collectively have a lot of legal experience on the phone right now. So sometimes I get nervous that we step over or we just sort of assume a level of knowledge. I mean, from a very bare bones aspect, litigation or a litigator like yourself, Aaron, or Justin, when we get to you, is, you guys are mostly the lawyers that you would see on TV, or the quote unquote real lawyers that you would imagine that, people, I'm not saying anything bad about you, Greg or Misha. We'll get to you too. You guys have your role. But like as a litigator, those are the folks who are, opposing counsel. They're in an adversarial position most often, where they're, either dealing with pleadings before they go to court or, eventually in court. By contrast, Misha, do you want to tell us what a transactional lawyer is and what happens in the days of the life of a transactional lawyer? I think it's a lot of FedExing and faxing, right? Isn't that all you guys do?
I wish.
Wait, hold on. Did she just hang up on me?
So on the transactional side, I don't go to court at all unless something is very, very wrong or it's a pro bono matter. So typically in the debt finance group, we're often working on deals which are just basically financings where we're working with the bank, who's our client, and the borrower side to try to get all the documentation in place for the financing. Might be a little different on, for example, the corporate and security side for what they do on a deal-to-deal basis. But I find that the day in the life of a transactional associate is very unpredictable. So rarely will I have a day where I'll come in and I'll know exactly what I'm going to be doing all day long and have enough time to do all those items. Typically, it's just, trying to get as much stuff as you can done while also fielding questions that are coming in from the client or from the borrower or their counsel, trying to put out little mini fires as you go and trying to also advance the deal as much as possible. So a lot of times as a junior associate, that means reviewing org docs, drafting some of the other ancillary documents to the credit agreement, maybe dealing with comments to ancillaries, possibly even the credit agreement, inputting those comments, negotiating with the other side on some of those. A lot of interaction between either the mid-level or senior associates or potentially the partner, just depending on the way the deal is staffed, about outstanding items. Also a lot of interaction with the paralegals on the deal as far as any of those items that we need their assistance with. So you're very much so kind of in the thick of it and a part of a team when you're working on the deal, and it's also pretty unpredictable from day to day.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for the description. So, Justin, we're on to the life of a litigation partner. So I imagine that it involves a lot of like popping bonbons, practicing your putting in the office, maybe some golf. I don't know. What is that?
Yeah, no, it's rare that I'm even here and working. No, I think Aaron kind of gave a good segue, and then listening to Misha, I think it highlights the difference, which I know we'll get into more, but I think my days are incredibly predictable, which is the opposite of Misha's, obviously. I mean, I could sit here and tell you everything that I will be doing probably for the next month. So it's rare that I'm dealing with fire drills or, it's easy for me to kind of set my schedule. But in terms of my daily tasks, piggybacking off of what Aaron said, as a partner, in terms of the work on a case, it's very rare if I do initial cuts to any document or put together really even the first or second draft. I'm doing a lot of reviewing and revising. Today, in fact, is the first day I'd probably gotten on Westlaw in 6 months. I was just convinced there was a case that an associate hadn't found. So, it's very rare that I'll do research at this point in time. I probably spend a good 2 hours a day, what I would say, kind of on client issues that I can't necessarily bill for, just more client-facing, arguably not necessarily legal work, but just work that's sort of incumbent upon managing a client or a case.
So is that deposition? I'm sorry, not that. Is that more like client development where you're going out looking for work?
Yeah, I mean, I would say It's both. It would, by both, I mean it would be what I would deem as general client development, but also just matters on a case that kind of are more just like shepherding the client through issues, but what I would deem kind of to what I would describe to my, a lay person is more just like housekeeping issues, things that I wouldn't necessarily bill as legal work. I think in terms of going to court, if it's anything more than just a minor motion, that certainly would fall on me probably more than an associate. But at the same time, and I'm sure we'll get into this more later, I think going into court is becoming less and less. And I've even seen that in, I guess, the 13 years that I've been practicing. So that's sort of, for me, I feel like it's more of it's almost more managerial in a sense, except when matters arise in cases, and then you find yourself more on the front line than an associate would.
Gotcha. Cool. Greg, so you're the guy who's popping bonbons, right? You're not really doing much work over there, just client dinners and a lot of golf? No?
A lot of golf, a lot of client dinners, a lot of trips to Vegas. Yeah, you're right.
I'm sure.
And, Misha, at least on the transactional side, hit it right on the head. The answer to this question is really the answer to why I went to law school in the first place. I get bored pretty easily, so knowing what the day was going to be like, I think would be problematic for me. So I like the fact that it's always something different and it's always something new. On the litigation side, and even to some extent on the debt finance side, you have to know what you're doing. On the transactional side, a lot of times you find out or you figure out what you're doing along the way. So that's the fun part for me. So what does that mean? That means a lot of what Misha talked about. You're still drafting. You're working with the associates on particular deals. I do M&A and securities, which means if a company wants to buy another company or sell itself, they'll come to us. If a company needs to raise money and they don't want to go into debt doing so, they'll come to us. So it's really, it's trying to find happiness for people who are looking to make money through their company. So it's at the end of the day, it can be a satisfying experience because the result is usually positive. But along the way, there are a lot of fires that have to be put out, a lot of questions that have to be answered, a lot of hand-holding. So you never know what you're going to be doing until you come in because it depends on, the phone ringing and the questions that people have. A lot of times we have folks like Misha may run down the answer for a particular question, and we're just kind of figuring it out along the way. So it is somewhat difficult to say what it's going to be day to day, but it's usually pretty interesting.
Right. Yeah, and then I guess you get everybody, as a transactional attorneys, you and Misha will get everybody when they're friends. It's like sort of as you're dating, right? And then, then the marriage happens and then the litigators come in to, sort out all the pieces during the divorce. Is that sort of the basics of it? Yeah.
The things we do wrong, the litigators come in and fix it. That's right.
That's a really good business model for the folks over at McGuirewoods, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, is there an incentive there not to do good work? I doubt it, but I guess the malpractice laws do keep you guys in line. Huh?
Yeah, that's right.
So did anybody? It sounded like I don't think anybody worked at a smaller firm. Do you guys has anybody?
Well, I actually did.
Oh, okay.
So
I don't know.
Yeah, so my first job was with it was about a 20-person law firm. It was a first year.
Big.
Yeah,
how big is McGuirewoods, just for the folks on the phone? If you haven't, you can give round numbers.
I think give or take 1,000 attorneys. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that we're in the 1,000 to 1,100 range.
Right. And so in terms of what's your experience? Good.
Yeah, so I think this is a big difference, and I think part of that would depend on the type of law you do, but as a litigator or, as a baby lawyer, I've always done litigation, but I was doing things as a first year that probably, I certainly wasn't doing it any better, but, things that 7-8 year attorneys here are doing. And I think that kind of theme holds true, at least on the litigation side. I think that's the biggest difference between, in terms of getting experience between a large firm and a small firm. I think the cases may be a little sexier for a big firm, maybe. But, I was arguing motions as a 4-month-old attorney. I probably had taken 5 depositions before in my first year. And the reality is there are probably, I don't know, Aaron, associates who are in their 7th year that probably have not taken a deposition. Right. And I think that's like a big difference between a small firm and a large firm, is just that you get thrown in the fire pretty quickly.
Yeah, I guess it amounts to the resources that you have available to you at that point. So, having practiced in a large law firm, I do know that the resources are there for you as an attorney. But maybe at a smaller firm, you're the go-to person. I think it's the resources, and then obviously, typically small firms won't have, where all they do are multi-million-dollar cases. Right. There's a more, you have an economics aspect of it where it makes sense to have, cheaper lawyers handling certain things at a small firm because of the case, the subject matter warrants it. Right. Gotcha. So you guys had mentioned it before, but in terms of a billable hour, just for the audience who's, never had the privilege and enjoyment of writing down their time at the end of the day, Misha, you want to cover that as to what a pleasurable experience that is?
Sure. So the billable hour is basically just the amount of time that you actually spend working on matters for which you can charge the client. So I know that this is slightly different in the litigation context, but on the transactional side, just about everything that we do when we're working on client matters is billable. Now, as far as writing down your time at the end of the day, I prefer to use the timer method. The time logging system we have has a timer where you can kind of click it on and click it off as you switch between matters, because I tend to work on quite a few matters in one day, so that helps me keep track of it. But Gotcha. Some people do it old school, write it down from memory. I can't remember at the end of the day anything, so it works better for me to use the timer.
Right. So just on a daily basis, like how much of your time is this billable versus non-billable time?
I think it depends on...
And maybe talk about an average day length. Again, speaking to an audience who maybe people haven't worked outside of, after college. So this is, when they step into, a large law firm or a law firm in general and start billing their time, this will be, for many people like myself, a first job,
Right.
So I don't know if this answers your question. Oh, go ahead, Misha.
Okay. So the debt finance group tends to get in a little bit later. So on a typical day, I get here at like 9:30. I have a dog, so I have to leave around 6:30 to let my dog out. But when I get home, I usually
Greg, are you kidding me? Wait, hold on. Is Greg still in the room?
Yeah, he's
what kind of
here.
shock you guys run around? You guys sound very humane over at McGuirewoods. I don't know.
We're collegial.
Not only do they keep bankers' hours, that was good Lord. Maybe I went to the wrong firm. Maybe I would have loved it.
No, Misha has a good deal.
So I usually leave around that time to let my dog out, but then I get back online between like 8 to whatever time I'm needed. And while I'm in the office from about 9:30 to 6:30, I can bill anywhere between 8 to 8.5 hours if I don't eat lunch at my desk and just stay in the office all day. But if you have like meetings or lunches, that takes that time. I'll probably say on an average day, I bill between like 8.5 to 9 hours.
And just to jump in, Misha's practice is a little bit different from a typical transactional practice because she is working kind of exclusively on large deals. So in other transactional practices, a lot of times you may be working on a number of smaller things, and so it's sometimes not as easy to get those 8 hours straight. Like there are plenty of days where people are in from 8 till 6 or 8 till 7 and only bill 4 hours in that particular day because it just depends on the workflow, and to some extent the practice of law is a roller coaster on the transactional side. Sometimes it's good and you leave fairly early and take your dog out, and then sometimes you can't get out as early as you want. So and unfortunately you can't always tell when that's going to happen.
Yeah, it's feast or famine. Justin, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think on the lit side, generally, I think my goal is to try to, I'd say for every 10 hours I'm in the office, I'm billing about 8.
That's pretty efficient.
So it's just not a 1-for-1, I guess is my point.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Justin, while we have you. Like, how does life differ as a partner versus an associate? And I can probably, I have a bunch of friends who are now partners at large law firms, and I'm constantly like, hey, did it get any easier? We would always think about, wouldn't it be great to be a partner? I know their answer, but yeah, I'd love to hear yours.
I wouldn't say it's easier. I think it's just a shift in the what you stress about and the pressures that you face. Because the reality is, as a partner, I have more. My responsibility is higher. In terms of decisions made within cases, depending on what's going on, the buck stops with me. Whereas, human nature, when you're an associate, while we all like to say that we take ownership of everything, the reality is, as an associate, you're typically not making a decision. You are not the final backstop of the decision that could impact a case. So I think the pressures are different. And then couple that with, as a partner, you have different expectations in terms of business development and really just being sure that continues. And I don't think that's something that's really top of mind as an associate. But it's certainly something I think about daily now.
Well, it's funny that when you first started out, the things that you stress about, all of my non-attorney friends never really understood that, being an attorney is essentially, you're being paid to worry about other people's problems as if they're your own. And I would imagine, yeah, you're right. If there's, Aaron's got a little bit of cover, it sounds, especially if you're working with him, obviously, he's got some cover from the client from you. But I guess, if something goes wrong or, something doesn't get done or doesn't get done right or on time, you're going to hear it from the client. How about you, Greg? Did you find any difference between, being an associate and being a partner? Has your handicap dropped?
It is different. The big analogy people give is, it's a pie eating contest where the winner gets more pie. So you do tend to do more. If you enjoy what you're doing, you're going to do more of it. Not only do you have kind of the same responsibilities you had as an associate to do, quality work in an efficient manner, but to Aaron's point, you have to go out and get work. You're an owner of the business, and so all the duties that come with owning any small business fall on your plate, as well as practicing law. So that's and a lot of people don't go into law school with that mindset. They want to be a lawyer. They enjoy the law, but the business aspect of it is something, at least when I was in law school, they didn't really teach. but it's something that we all have to do because it is, at the end of the day, it's a business.
And
there's also
good.
No, I was just going to say it's not it's not all bad. Clearly, there's a lot of mentoring, there's a lot of recruiting, there's a lot of relationship building that you get to do at the partner level. I mean, the associates do it as well, but because you're relied on to make those final decisions, I mean, a lot of times people come to you when not only when there are issues, but just as a resource, and so you get to build these long-term relationships that even if folks leave a particular firm, you tend to stay in touch with them, and so they're definitely positives to it.
Right. What about let's just quickly go through, like, for somebody who, again, we sort of have to dumb this down a little bit. Not that the audience is dumb, but they just don't have the experience. For 1Ls and 2Ls, what are the various practice groups within litigation? And we'll let Justin answer that, and then we'll come back and talk about the transactional ones as well. So, like, is tax part of the litigation group, or antitrust, or the various big buckets, I guess?
Yeah, so I guess at our firm, and I think it might even be sort of a different firm by firm, but at least here, I mean, our large groups are financial services litigation, commercial litigation, antitrust. Aaron, am I leaving one out? I mean, here's the reality, I think.
Government regulatory.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say white collar.
White collar, government, yeah. I mean, the reality is I'm technically in the antitrust group, but I work with people in the financial services litigation and commercial lit the most. So I don't really see, I mean, we all certainly have probably things that we're more experienced in on the lit side, but, my goal is to become more of a generalist, so I've tried to steer clear of being thrown in a bucket. But I think those are the ones at least
smart.
Here.
That's a smart move. I mean, especially when antitrust litigation might be governed by who's in the White House,
right?
It's a smart move to be generalist in that sense on the litigation side. How about on the transactional side, Greg?
So here in McGuirewoods on the transactional side, we've got the debt finance group, which I'm in, the healthcare group, M&A and corporate group. There's also an M&A and kind of private equity and energy corporate group. We've got public finance, real estate, regulatory and compliance, securities and capital markets, and tax and employee benefits. And even within all those groups, there are, if not formal breakouts, then informal ones. Like, for example, in my group, the debt finance group, you'll find partners who specialize in pretty much everything, energy financing, investment-grade financing, asset-backed lending, like you name it. There's a lot of specializations that can fall under any one of those groups.
Gotcha. Aaron, let me just jump around a little bit here. In terms of, it sounds like Justin has his hands in a lot of different types of litigation. Is that the same thing as an associate, or do you tend to specialize a little bit more as an associate in the lit group?
I think as an associate, you're going to work more with the people in your immediate department, just because that's where your partner supervisors generally are, and so that's where a lot of your work comes from, at least initially. So I think you tend to more stick with where you are in the group. I think especially if you're an associate that handles government investigations, for example, while there is a lot of overlap between an investigation by the New York Attorney General's office, for example, or the SEC or the Justice Department with litigation, if you're working on those kinds of matters, you tend to stick on those kinds of matters. Whereas if you're in one of our lit groups, it's more fluid. I think the same is also true with the another group we have, the employment employment law group. Generally, while they do other stuff and handle other types of litigation, generally, especially on the younger side, they stay within employment. The same is also true of bankruptcy. Generally, the bankruptcy folks, bankruptcy litigation, and that's one practice group that I guess that kind of straddles litigation and transactional, because there are elements that are obviously, you're dealing with bondholders and creditors and debtors and corporate reorganization, but also you're doing litigation in bankruptcy court, so that can straddle the two. So the bankruptcy group tends to be very specialized as well.
The analogy there is, all your neighbors show up at the divorce hearing with their hand out looking for something from your divorce. So
exactly.
I can imagine. I can imagine that there's a lot of cross-pollination between the various departments at a firm when you're working on a bankruptcy case. How, in terms of, do you ever work with corporate associates? Would you ever call up Misha and say, hey, I've got a problem, or this is an issue in my case, or is she way too specialized in the debt finance group?
No, I would certainly and have in the past reached out to folks on the transactional side, mainly when I'm dealing with litigation that has spun out of a financing, or more often it's going to be litigation that spins out of an acquisition or a merger, or a stock offering. That's a lot of the corporate litigation is post-merger or post-acquisition litigation, or stock drop lawsuits where the stock goes down after disclosure about information, disclosure of information about a public company, and then plaintiffs or stockholders sue the company saying it should have been disclosed earlier, or in the acquisition context, the purchaser or the buyer sues the seller because of something that they claim the seller lied about, and in those situations, you go back to either the deal team that worked on it, or other transactional lawyers who might be familiar with those kinds of documents that you're litigating about. So there's definitely opportunities to cross into the transactional group, and at McGuirewoods it's one of the advantages, we have a lot of different practice groups, so we have a lot of different expertise that you can reach out to while you're when you have problems in the litigation that might benefit from their experience.
Gotcha. Misha, do you get a lot of phone calls from other attorneys in the firm saying, like, okay, what the hell do you do over there, and explain to me how this impacts this case? And especially because you definitely sound like a numbers person, and everybody goes to law school because they have a phobia of numbers. So,
I can say I'm definitely not a numbers person. Thank goodness for the calculator shortcut on the keyboard. And I would say for me, it typically goes the other way, because our deals have typically a lot of collateral involved. We're trying to get folks from other groups involved in our deals. So whether that be somebody on the real estate team, or the credit agreement has various representations and warranties that the borrower has to make. These might be tax-related or ERISA-related, so we'll need to pull in folks from those different groups to review some of the changes that the other side suggests, et cetera. So the debt finance group, I feel like we do often interface with folks in other groups, just because the credit agreement is just so broad and covers so many things, that it's nice to get folks with expertise on a lot of those matters.
Gotcha. How about let's go something that might be a little bit more tangible, especially for the folks who are starting a summer associate position. In terms of the assignments, what's your best recommendation in terms, and anybody can answer this one, and maybe in terms of seeking assignments, and also in terms of sort of what you expect as the assignment giver. But what's the best way to integrate yourself into, if you're a summer associate stepping into McGuirewoods, what would you want to see your summer associate doing in terms of trying to go out and finding work within the firm?
Well, I can say from my perspective, when I was a summer, the way the McGuirewoods summer program is set up, you aren't put into a specific practice group, so you can kind of try anything. And I would really encourage folks when they are summering to do that. When I first summered with McGuirewoods, I didn't know what debt finance was at all. I don't have, as you can tell from my undergrad degree, I don't have a finance background or any kind of transactional background whatsoever. When I first started doing debt finance projects as a summer, I hadn't even taken any transactional law classes in law school yet. So I would encourage everyone to take on assignments, varied assignments with different practice groups, because you really never know what you might like, especially on the transactional side, just because law school is not really geared towards showing you what a transactional practice is like. So that's something that you really have to see kind of firsthand for yourself to see if it's something that you would like.
Gotcha. How about you, Aaron?
So I think it's, I didn't summer at McGuirewoods, so I'm glad Misha could speak to that. At the firm I summered with, so you also weren't given a role in the summer. You were just kind of floating. I had the unique experience of summering in the summer of 2008 when there was literally nothing to do. The associates didn't have anything to do because
during that time, weren't we? We were like collecting shotguns and hoarding water, I think, is what I remember.
Right. It was mainly a lot of
the apocalypse,
buying canned goods for large law firms, especially in New York. But you'll get work as a summer when and it's kind of the same as a summer. And the first year you'll get work when you get to the firm, they'll have some ready-made assignments, and you'll work with you'll I assume getting a partner mentor and an associate mentor. I think that's the way we do it at McGuirewoods, and that's the way we did it at my old firm as well. And those will kind of be your initial assignments, and then you should be able to be able to tell what you're kind of expressing an interest in, and the firms will try to work with you on that. And then from there, it's just kind of building relationships with the folks in the department that you want to work on. Once you have your foot in the door of that initial assignment, it's really, doing it well. And then, being proactive and asking for more, both as a summer and as a young associate, asking for the kind of work that you want to do once you figure out what you want to do, which I agree with Misha, you should definitely, especially on the transactional side, try out a lot of different things. But once you kind of have an idea, it's definitely being proactive and approaching the folks who do that kind of work.
Gotcha. And Justin and Greg, in terms of how you dole out assignments, what are you looking for in the for somebody to be the quote unquote go-to associate or go-to summer associate that you encounter at McGuirewoods?
I guess on the associate level, kind of starting there and then going backwards. I just look for, to me, if anyone that takes the initiative, that people that are willing, accept responsibility, because you would be surprised at how many people won't. And I think that really translates even to a summer. I think, and building relationships, as Aaron said, everyone wants to work with people they like. So I think, striking that balance of, getting to know who you're working with, establishing a good working relationship, but actually not just doing quality work, but actually getting to that point where you can do it without always being asked, I think is, to me, that's like the ideal associate to work with.
Yeah, this is Greg. I don't have much to add. I think you hit it right on the head. It's a hard thing to do, especially when you haven't done it before on the transactional side or have seen it before. But folks that can anticipate issues or problems or needs ahead of time are the folks that are the most helpful. At the end of the day, that's what we're doing as lawyers for our clients is, not only answering the specific questions they've asked, but the ones that they haven't asked yet. And so when associates can see the big picture, but still get in the weeds and the details and really pay attention to the details, I think they're the most successful ones.
Gotcha. Let me ask you, because I'm assuming that it's been a while since you've been out there, walking around the firm looking for assignments. But your focus now as a partner is more about going out and finding clients, as you mentioned before. Like skills that that even a law student, a law student certainly isn't thinking about building a business network now. But things that allowed you to go from associate to partner at a premier firm like McGuirewoods, like what would you say? What advice would you give your 22-year-old self if you could go back and say, hey, you really want to make your life a little bit easier? Do X, Y, and Z, in terms of client development.
So I'd say, the first thing is to be an excellent lawyer. At the end of the day, clients hire lawyers, not law firms. So, early on, you really have to build your skills, whichever practice you're in, so that you're providing and known for providing quality work. Folks inside the firm know that you're doing good work. Folks outside the firm will know it as well, because you'll be put in front of clients pretty early on, and really be you'll be shown off. Two, and it's not hard to do, but we don't think about it a lot. A lot of our client development is just relationship building. You're doing great work for people, but you also have to be someone that folks want to be around and like and enjoy talking to. And that comes to all of us. That comes easy depending on the person we're talking to. We're not all going to be comfortable talking to every single person. And so the goal shouldn't be to be, everything to everyone, but you can build, and we consistently build relationships with a number of different people. And, a lot of times those are people within the firm who are your classmates or, one or two classes above or below you that leave, go in-house, and then need somebody to do their work. And because, you were known as being not only a good lawyer, but a good person, they're going to be willing to send work to you.
I love that answer. Justin, can you build on it, or?
Yeah, I didn't know if Craig was going to go there, but he took the words out of my mouth. I think when I look back, probably, one thing I certainly wish I would have done better was maintain my network from law school. Most of my clients now, there's one in particular that I probably do that gives me a significant amount of work. And he was a second-year lawyer with me at my first firm. And we were obviously friends, but we maintained that relationship when he left. And then, he wound up in-house. But I think, looking back now, I went to a law school reunion, I guess 2 years ago, and I was amazed at the number of people that are in-house now. And, I particularly since I don't live where I went to law school, I sort of lost contact with a lot of people. But I think maintaining, being a good person first and foremost is, to me, the most important, but just generally speaking, maintaining connections and contacts, because you just never know where people end up and when somebody needs someone. And so I think, some of my advice, looking back to me 15 years ago, would have been to stay in better contact with my classmates.
Great. Love it. So Misha and Aaron, we heard, generally that, what associates or partners look for from associates is, top quality work. They're likable. to, and pleasant to be around. They're anticipating problems not only for the client, but also for the partner for the client. So making the partner look good. What do associates expect of the partners that they work with? This should be fun. Come on, Misha. Give it to them.
So I think for sure, especially when you're a junior associate, you're looking for some guidance on what it is that you're supposed to be doing. And with time, as you figure out more and more what your role is and what people expect, I think you'll understand that better. But a lot of times you do need guidance on where to get started or generally what you're looking for, especially in the transactional practice where you might not have had much experience with some of the subject matter in law school. That may be less true on the mergers and acquisition side, but certainly on the debt finance side, I had no idea what folks in my group did on a daily basis other than what I had seen during the summer. And then I also think one thing that's important is being available for questions. I mean, and that doesn't mean you're gonna, sit down for an hour with a partner asking them, every little detail about a project. But to the extent that you can't run down answers yourself or reach out to other colleagues who might know the answer, or mid-level or senior associates who might know the answer, having the partner there to say, okay, I've looked through these credit agreement comments, and these are the items that I have outstanding questions on. Just a handful of things that you want their opinion on. So I think for me, that has been, those have been some of the best relationships that I have with partners, the ones who do have time, because everybody obviously is super busy, especially the partners, but the ones that do have time to kind of give you feedback and answer questions for you when you need them answered.
How about you, Aaron? Sam?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, the clarity and some of this is on an associate to ask the questions that they have, but right. Clarity with assignments, especially when you're a junior associate, availability, like Misha said, for follow-ups that are need to be answered. But I think that the most important is especially when you're a junior associate dealing with a partner, is taking the time to explain why certain things were done, why certain edits were made, why certain comments were made. And it doesn't have to be at the time, but even if it's after the deadline is passed and everything's filed, it was very helpful to take the time to explain why a certain decision was made or a certain section was drafted in a certain way. And another thing would be just remembering what it was like when you were an associate. The first time I interacted with a partner as a first year, I was absolutely terrified because at the firm I started at was a huge law firm, bigger than McGuirewoods, and I had been there about 2 months dealing only with mid-level associates, and the first time I dealt with a partner, I thought I was going to have a nervous breakdown. But so it's remembering what it was like as a junior associate, especially for partners dealing with very junior lawyers, I think is important as well.
Gotcha. Justin and Greg, I'm sort of a contemporary with you guys, although I have a lot more gray hair. I don't know how you guys do it, but you must have seen over the years, some of especially with the transition from millennials to generation, I don't know what we're at now, Generation Z. I mean, what are some of the glaring errors that you see associates making when trying to manage a relationship with you, right? Like to try to do that, to try to get your input and your advice and your help. What are some of the things that you'd say, like, hey, don't do this if you're going to be a summer associate at McGuirewoods or any other place when you're dealing with managing, a partner? And I'll let either one of you take that one.
I mean, I think a lot of it's just common sense, but I will say, just generally speaking, it always amazes me where I feel like people don't have it. And I think
hold on. I think you might make you might have to have a story that to back that one up because
no, I don't.
I know there is.
The common sense message is just like to respect everyone's time because I'm trying to afford, the copy clerk the exact same courtesy, and I think it's important to do the same to us, and I really don't have. Couldn't really articulate an example, but if I just think, what would bother me and what would stress me out. I have 3 kids at home. I have 1,000 things going, and I will stop anything to help. But, I think you just have to be smart about it. And,
right.
As Aaron mentioned, articulate your question or concern. Because, I want to help you, but you have to help me help you.
Right. Now, I would imagine that, one of the things is just not make their problem your problem, right? Or if they're going to make it your problem, a lot of people, like what I'm hearing from a lot of my contemporaries who are partners now is, you can't believe how many people text me. These kids text me with emojis about, what I really want is a very clearly defined subject line in an email that outlines their question or concern, and that's it. Then I can work with that, but I can't, whatever emoji they're going to, like the dancing girl emoji, what am I supposed to do with that, So, Greg, you get a lot of dancing girl emojis, Greg?
Only from Misha. I guess for me, maybe two things, and this may depend on the person, but especially as a summer associate, I think a lot of it is just being genuine, being yourself. A lot of times people think they have to act a certain way or manage up a certain way, and that often causes conflict with other summer associates or other associates at the firm. And that, I've been on recruiting committee before, and those a lot of times those are the issues that come to light more than anything else. We know that you're young, you haven't practiced before, especially on the transactional side. You don't really know, what you're doing. So a lot of it is, are you willing to try? Are you hardworking? And are you, someone that we want to work with? You spend a fair amount of time together, and so you want to make sure you're spending with people that you like. So, and that's not a particular personality. There are a lot of different types of people here. So you should feel comfortable being yourself. Again, if you can't be yourself where you're working, you're going to be miserable, during your work life. So, part of the thing you're doing, not only when you're interviewing, but when you're a summer, is determining if this is a place that you can be comfortable. It's not just getting the initial job, because this is oftentimes a place you can spend a significant portion of your life. The other small thing I'd say is just a practical tip. I think this is just because I'm old and grew up with paper, but take notes. A lot of times when you're giving out assignments, the younger folks don't take any notes, and it makes old people like me afraid. So just take notes. I think you'll find that it's helpful. You'll find it helps you organize your thoughts, and the questions you have a lot of times will be in the notes that you took. So that's just one small recommendation.
Gotcha. Cool. Misha, you mentioned before that you never took any debt finance classes at Duke, and I'm sure they offered them. So what would you recommend, aside from getting really far down in the weeds in terms of a transactional practice like debt finance, or cross-border finance, or whatever you guys are doing these days? What core classes would you hope that someone who's starting at McGuirewoods would have taken prior to showing up as a first-year associate?
I would definitely say business associations, which I did not take. So I would recommend that for sure. I know. I can't believe they hired me. So business associations is a good one. a lot of people will tell you a lot of different things, but if you're interested in debt finance, secure transactions or an Article 9 class would be helpful. But it really just depends. You know, I think any transactional law classes that you can take can be helpful to the practice. For example, one of the first transactional law classes I took when I thought, okay, I think I'm going to do debt finance was a bankruptcy class. Not really. I don't practice in bankruptcy at all, but bankruptcy, the potential of bankruptcy is a big issue that kind of spans through a lot of our loan documents. So that's like definitely good background for me to know when they're talking about some of the terminology and some of the statutory periods, et cetera, to have a background and know what that is. So I think every little bit really does count. And you don't necessarily have to, like you said, get super specialized, but I think every little bit counts. And even if you weren't to go into debt finance, even if you were to go on like the M&A side, you would still find a secure transaction class.
Right. How about you, Aaron? I mean, most of these kids have probably taken Civ Pro, I would imagine, as a 1L. But after that, you probably remember from American that it's up to you to choose your courses. So, as a litigation associate at a large law firm, what would you recommend them take?
So yeah, I mean, I know most classes are, especially first year, geared towards litigation, but I would take, if they offer it, Civ Pro 2 in addition to Civ Pro 1. American had Civ Pro 2. I didn't take it. I probably should have, given how so much of our stuff is really just based in the federal rules, and knowing them well can be extremely, extremely helpful and give you a leg up among others who are, especially junior associates in lit who might not know them. And then evidence. Evidence wasn't required at my law school. I would definitely take it, even if you don't necessarily use it right away, which you might not, given how few cases go to trial. But coming off of a trial that Justin and I did last fall, if you take it, it'll come back, and it'll be extremely useful. It's not like riding a bike, but you'll remember hearsay, and you'll remember the federal rules of evidence, and it's I think it's incredibly, incredibly helpful to take evidence if you want to be a litigator.
Yeah, it would almost be as bad as, like, if you didn't take evidence, it would almost be as bad as a transactional attorney not taking biz orgs. But, sorry, Misha.
Yeah.
I said that out loud. No, I'm just kidding. Good for you that you could. I mean, I tried to avoid biz orgs because I didn't, corporations made no sense to me at all. So the fact that you made it out of law school without taking it is great, and that you didn't practice it now is even better. I love it. I just don't want to. We're running a little bit over, so I want to to sort of scan through some of the questions here that that would be relevant to this group. Let me just ask, for the two associates on the line, for Misha and Aaron, when did you decide? What was it? Did you decide as a first-year associate? Did you change your selection? Were you going to be a litigator and then became a corporate associate, or how did it work? When did it finally click with you, Misha, that you're like, okay, now I'm going to do transactional work?
Well, for me, it kind of clicked in reverse when I was a summer. I was on a lot of litigation projects when I first started. And I just was realizing that the research part of it was not my favorite. I really enjoyed the writing, but was finding the research to be really brutal. And I kind of resigned myself to being like, okay, well, I guess this is just what lawyers do. But then I finally got on a transactional project and was like, okay, so there's another option, another route that you can go down. So for me, I realized that I didn't want to do litigation and that there were transactional options, and it just so happened that debt finance fit me the best. So again, I definitely encourage folks, nobody expects you to come into the law firm as a summer knowing what you want to do with the rest of your life. If you do, that's great. But if you don't, I honestly wouldn't sweat it too much, because the cards will probably fall as they should in that respect. That's definitely what happened for me.
Yeah, and just going back to what Greg said, I mean, it's great to have the job as a summer associate, or even if you're interviewing, in terms of OCI getting the offer. But I always counsel students, whether they're interviewing and they're on their callback or they're back for their summer, their 10-week summer. I'm like, look, it's just as much of an interview for you of the firm as it is for them to know whether they like you or not. So I encourage folks, just like you said, I mean, to try to figure out exactly as many different practice areas, just to sort of call out, like, okay, even though I do have a fairly phobia of numbers, like what do I now do? What do they do over there in the the tax department? And take an assignment there, and then realize quickly, like, that's not for me, and I'll go back and be a litigator or something like that. How about you, Aaron? When did it click for you that litigation was the way to go?
So yeah, that's exactly right. Trying a bunch of stuff, and when I was a summer, I kind of knew what litigators did, but I didn't know what corporate lawyers did. So I tried to do a lot of the corporate assignments, corporate real estate, and transactional, what I could get from deal work. And then I enjoyed it and took a corporate drafting class in law school and had no idea what was going on. I could not figure out the deal docs for the life of me. I think it was the lowest grade I got in law school was in that class, and I thought maybe this isn't the best for me. Came back and it started out in litigation, and given that I started it while we were still in the recession, that there also was not a lot of deal work to be had, but there was a lot of litigation. So right. I kind of fell into it that way. So some of it is like folks mentioned, like Misha said, it's going to work itself out. Some of it is somewhat circumstantial. Just because of when I started at a law firm, there was a lot of litigation, not much deal work, and turns out I probably wouldn't have been very good at deal work anyway. So that's right. When I decided that litigation was probably the way to go.
Yeah, I was amazed by how many antitrust attorneys and became bankruptcy specialists during the recession. It's where the work was. So you got to gravitate toward that, I guess.
Exactly.
Greg, and you had mentioned before that you served on the hiring committee in the past. In terms of evaluating summer associates, most of these folks who are 2Ls are going to be walking in a month or so to a summer associate program without any real understanding as to, they'll never see the pink sheet that we fill out, or I used to have to fill out with respect to the quality of their work. Like, how are they being evaluated? Both in terms of the individual assignment and then ultimately, I guess, when you go to pass on who's going to make the cut and who's not going to make the cut at the final end of the summer.
So, and every firm's going to be different, I think, in this respect, but I think a lot of the large firms, at least now, are fairly similar. So we don't, it's not a Hunger Games model. We're not going to hire, 30 summers for 5 slots. So if,
right,
to the most part, if you get through the interview process and you're extended an offer, it's because we expect you to come join us, as a full-time attorney. Now, that's not to say it's not a continuing interview throughout the summer, because it is, but to some extent it's yours to lose. It's a lot of what we talked about earlier. I mean, it's not, you don't necessarily have to have a mastery of secure transactions or Fed tax or anything along those lines, but if you show that you have the ability to learn and you're willing to learn, you're willing to work hard, then that goes a long way. If you show that you're comfortable being part of a team and you enjoy it and you don't cause trouble, I mean, that goes a long way. It's not. I'm not going to say it's impossible to lose an offer, because it does happen, but it's not what the summer program is geared to achieve.
Right. I'm always amazed by some of the stories that come out when I work pretty closely with recruiters who sponsor kids to come and take either through Pipeline Practice or Law Preview or something. And I always sit down and I'm like, tell me the horror story this year. And invariably it involves alcohol. And invariably, they still even get an offer. Like, I'm just like, what? They still got an offer. So I guess you're right. It really is yours to lose. I don't know exactly what you have to do to lose it. But let's wrap up with Justin, in terms of the social aspects of the summer. What do you like? What's the importance there, and how do you think that fits into somebody who's stepping in as a 2L? What should they be aware of?
Well, I mean, I think it's important because that's how, I mean, that plays right into building relationships. I mean, that, people are, as I think I mentioned earlier, you want to work with people you like. And, I mean, that doesn't mean go out and be the last man standing at the bar every night or whatever. But, I mean, I think you need to be present to get to know people outside of the office, because it shows you're genuinely interested, which I think is very important. We all want to connect, I think building a personal connection is going to get you a long way.
Right. Misha, Aaron, do you have any advice before, we turn these kids loose on a summer associate program?
I would just say be yourself, and also kind of along the lines of something that Don mentioned a minute ago. Remember when you're picking a firm to summer at that you're going to spend a lot of time with these people, and just like they're trying to make sure that you kind of fit in with them, you also want to make sure that the firm that you're at is a good fit for you. I have quite a few friends who kind of went to firms where they weren't necessarily, didn't feel like the culture at that firm was going to work out for them, and 9 times out of 10 it didn't. So I would say, right. Be yourself and kind of follow your gut as far as where you think will be the best fit for you. Because being a junior associate is not easy anywhere, so you definitely don't want to have that transition period happen somewhere where you don't really like the people that you're surrounded with. So that's important, I think.
Aaron, aside from joining a CrossFit to work off all those summer lunches, so you don't put on like the first year or the summer associate 15 like I did.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of food, you might have to detox food and alcohol after the summer. But it is to what Justin said and what Misha said. It's be present at the events and really use it to get to know both the firm and the other people in your summer class. Because going back to some of the business development points, I mean, it doesn't seem like it, but that's a lot of the people that you're going to be working with and could eventually develop business from, and they're just going to be, they can develop into really good friends. I mean, the folks, a lot of the people from my summer class are some of my best friends. I mean, I went to their weddings. They've come to my weddings. We go on vacation together, even though we're not at the same firm anymore. We all stay in touch, and that's obviously great for potential business connections, but it's also just great because they're just my good friends. And so really just getting to know the folks in your summer associate program, I think is very, very important. Don't just treat it as a job, treat it as not a 3-month internship, but really as a time to get to know the place where you might start your career and get to know folks who you're going to, potentially know for the rest of your lives.
Well, Greg and Justin, anything you want to add besides, obviously exercising good judgment?
I mean, I feel like we've covered that. Are you saying in terms of summer associate?
Yeah. No, in terms of the social aspect of the firm. If there's nothing to add, there's nothing to add. I think we
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think, being yourself, being present, I think that's really, frankly, the 2 most important things.
I agree.
Cool.
I agree. I think we've hit it.
All right, guys. Well, I'll let you go. We went over 14 minutes. I feel horrible. Please don't send me a bill. I know that Justin's got 3 kids at home, so he's got to go, relieve somebody.
I'm just in bed, so I don't care.
Even better, right? Exactly. Wait a little bit longer before you leave them. But thank you guys so much for volunteering your time. I thank you guys individually. I thank McGuirewoods collectively. They're a huge proponent and sponsor of Pipeline to Practice, and I love working with you guys, and I really enjoy doing this with them as well.
Thank you.
All right,
thank you.
You're very welcome. The evening is yours now. Take it easy. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.